Hi everyone, welcome back to this session. My name is Alec O'Sullivan. I'm the policy lead at Deco. And our next session takes us across the Tasman to New Zealand, a country that often punches above its weight in shaping progressive policy and technology. Moderated by Rachael Jones, we are joined by Trevor Topfer, Jeremy Muir, Paul Quickenden, and Rocky Yuen. Together they represent the full spectrum of the ecosystem, industry leaders, legal expertise, innovators, and regulators. This conversation will explore how New Zealand is approaching digital asset regulation and where innovation is being encouraged, offering lessons that resonate beyond its borders. Hi, everyone. Welcome.
Good morning, or good afternoon, as the case may be, depending on where in the world you sit.
All right, so let's kick it off. We haven't got the moderator in here just yet, so Trevor, Rocky, Paul, Jeremy, we'll just have to bear with me for a sec as I get the wrong sheet up.
No problem. While you're doing that, we can go ahead and introduce ourselves.
Please
me
do.
first. Jeremy, do you want to let everybody know who you are? And
we on the live yet?
We are.
Yeah. Nice to see everyone. Hi, I'm Jeremy Muir. I'm a partner at MinterEllisonRuddWatts in New Zealand, and I'm also currently the chair of Blockchain NZ, the New Zealand equivalent of the Digital Economy Council of Australia. I won't say the acronym. And delighted to be here and always ready to talk about crypto policy and progress in New Zealand.
Awesome. Paul?
Good morning. I am Paul Quickenden. I am the Chief Commercial Officer for Easy Crypto, recently acquired by SwiftX. I am also a member of the Blockchain New Zealand Council.
Nice. Rocky?
Kia ora, tēnā koutou. My name is Rocky Yuen. I am from the New Zealand Department of Internal Affairs, and I'm one of the principal advisors there, specifically supervising AML and CFT in New Zealand. Thank you for having me here.
And there you have it, folks. We have a regulator in our panel, which is very exciting. My name's Trevor. I'm the Executive Director of Blockchain New Zealand, and I have the very great privilege of working with Jeremy and Paul amongst the other Executive Council members and the wider community. I also am the CEO of a company called Avatars Global, which builds in the AI space. So very, very happy to be here and excited to contribute to what has so far been a very interesting run of events. And it's wonderful to hear the same conversation happening all around the world, which is really cool, with nuances, of course, but very nice.
Thank you, Trevor. I'll hand over to you to moderate now. I've been informed that you're happy to do it, so thank you very much. I'll leave you guys to it.
I'll do my best. It's always fun when you're the moderator and a panelist. So I'm used to wearing multiple hats.
The hard questions, Trevor.
Yeah. So I will do my best to be Rachel in this event, and we'll get into it. So, look, New Zealand's approach to digital asset regulation has been described as wait and see, while other jurisdictions like Australia and Singapore are taking more proactive stances. So a question to my fellow panelists is, where do you see New Zealand positioning itself in the next 12 to 18 months? And what are the key decisions we need to make now? So with that in mind, Jeremy, you're a long-time advocate for regulatory growth. You co-authored the 22 recommendations to the Finance and Expenditure Select Committee on Crypto Regulation. With the recent government changes, which of these recommendations do you think are most critical to implement first, and how do we balance innovation with consumer protection?
Yeah, thanks, Trevor. Look, I think the first thing to say is that we wrote a report, myself and Dr. Alex Sims, about 3 years ago for the Finance and Expenditure Select Committee inquiry into cryptocurrencies. We had about 22 recommendations. Of those, I think about one's been sort of fully implemented, which is a fintech sandbox environment being run by the Financial Markets Authority, which is helpful both for there has some sort of crypto adjacent and crypto companies in there, including Paul and Easy Crypto. But that's only part of the story. But really moving on from that report, that it's almost ancient history now. At that time, we were saying, let's not move too quickly on sort of comprehensive licensing or other regimes for New Zealand, but let's see which way the rest of the world goes. Obviously, the US hadn't really started to move at that point. European micro-regulation was not necessarily the way we would have seen ourselves going. So it was, and Australia was sort of still at an early stage. So a lot has happened since then. I think at the moment we run the risk of not starting when others are well down the track. Having said that, Blockchain NZ is quite energized at the moment. We had a great conference. Thank you to Trevor and both of the other panelists who were there in Queenstown a month or so ago, where we had a good regulatory session. And from that, we're looking to engage closely with parliamentarians, both from the governing coalition and the other parties, to really try and kickstart the process or keep it moving along perhaps some stronger lines. At the moment, though, the regulation that is there is relatively fit for the basic purposes. Our securities law is relatively modern, works reasonably well for these things. The layer we're probably missing is something around licensing of certain key activities and market participants. There you go. That's a good starter for 10. Always keen to hear what the other players have to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting started is kind of the core theme, I think, and yeah, as you point out, we're off and running, but where we go, we need to figure out very quickly. So I'll move to Paul now, who works for no doubt the most well-known exchange in New Zealand, and is one of the guys that's definitely on the front line. And we're now joined by our moderator, Rachael. I'm doing your job, Rach. Just give me a second. You can then take over, which is perfectly timed because I'm the next question. So what regulatory clarity, Paul, would most benefit both industry growth and consumer confidence, and how are reporting standards impacting the sector?
It's a great question. Look, our view is that the sector's kind of largely thought of as quite niche, and it's not. The parliamentarians and the policymakers are just waking up to the scale and scope of the industry, and so and I think that when we head to Wellington, and is it next month, there's going to be a bit of a shock when we start talking about the numbers. So the thing that we would like to see is a little bit more clarity in the financial advisors regime. There's a little bit of interpretative bias there, and if you're quite conservative, our view is that it's easy for financial advisors to say that we don't want to have a piece of this, and we think that that's a big gap because probably like Australia, we've spent the last 30-40 years telling people who want to do good things for their investment future to get advice, financial advice, and so we'd like that tidied up. Then Jeremy's already touched on licensing, so I'm going to leave that there. But we're already starting to respond to some papers around tokenization, stable coins, that sort of stuff, and we would like to see that continue on. I think that that sector has immense potential to help New Zealand in terms of some of its bias towards other markets and opening up liquidity to property, to illiquid markets like private equity and all that sort of stuff, and our view is that that's going to happen very quickly, and we think that would tidy up in that part would certainly give both issuers and buyers the kind of certainty that they would need to feel comfortable in that market.
Nice.
Thanks for taking on the burden there, Trevor.
No
I managed to
worries,
join
mate.
every session but my own, so the way of it. But I was deeply actually really, really looking forward to this segment because I'm a Kiwi and I work for an Australian-based stablecoin company, right? So I am deeply invested in this region and I just wanted to do well. And so we've done a bunch of kind of questions now, and I want to ask you, Trevor, you are kind of working within regulation, as in you operate and run a business, but then you also are the CEO of NZ Blockchain as well. So you kind of come at regulation from two different angles. And I'm really interested in what your observations have been of Australia and maybe the areas which you would preference that New Zealand should adopt, and maybe some of the things that we should stay away from?
Yeah, to do or not to do, that is the question. It's interesting because I have to sort of wear those two different hats. On the ground in Avatars Global, we're working within AI frameworks and AI regulation, and if I'm being honest, there's even less clarity in that market than there is in the blockchain space, and that market's moving equally as quickly, if not more quickly. So on that side of it, it's a little bit more challenging. And the blockchain side is I'm wearing the opposite hat, where I'm trying to advocate and get some clarity around our regulation and put the sort of lay the table or the playing field for the industry. And so, New Zealand has a reputation of being a bit of a fast follower, and we tend to watch our big brothers over the Tasman and follow what works for them, which in a lot of cases is fine. But I really think that in this particular industry, given the pace at which it's moving and the way that not only Australia but other jurisdictions, Singapore, the US, are moving in much better tandem with industry and government and regulators than we are, I think that we are very much in a position where we could get left behind. And so that kind of context and overview is really the crux of what I think we can adopt and not adopt from Australia. So the first part of it is getting all of our regulators and government, but getting that whole of government approach that Australia and the great work of DECA. I can say it because I'm Australian. Isn't that weird? There's an Aussie talking about New Zealand and a Kiwi talking about Australia. But the great work that DECA have done with their parliamentary friends of blockchain and bringing in all of the different sort of regulators and government together to row the boat forward as a united voice, I think that's absolutely crucial for New Zealand. And as Jeremy points out, we're making progress in that way. We sort of had that first meeting at the conference a month or so ago, and we've got the next one lined up at Parliament House next month. And so, we're hoping that continues to gather and build momentum and advocacy and alignment as we go forward. I think we need to, one of the things that New Zealand hasn't done, which is both a current challenge but also a huge opportunity, is we haven't made we don't have a position on blockchain or crypto. We've not even really said that we're open for business here. I mean, Paul and his team have done a remarkable job in the wake of that of building a very successful business. But I think that we just need to give clarity early to the industry players and say, this is our intent, this is what we want to see happen in New Zealand, and then we need to turn that position out globally and send the right signal internationally. And I think Australia's sort of done that, and I think we can definitely learn from the way in which Australia has done that by having a very strong, clear position on what type of businesses we want in New Zealand and how we want to operate in this industry. And then I think if we send that signal globally, we're in a really good position to develop a strong, thriving industry and even potentially lead. The one thing we have that is potentially our biggest asset is that we are small and we should be able to move quicker. And so that lends me to what we shouldn't copy from Australia, which is the over complexity and the fact that it's a way more complicated beast in Australia. And so with that complexity, it often slows the boat right down and decisions. And there's a big announcement today, which I believe has been quite a number of years in the making, which is an example of what I'm talking about. So if we are able to get alignment and move quickly, then we're in a position to take the industry forward at a rate of knots. And we've seen from other jurisdictions that sort of top-down decision making can move the needle quickly and can grow an industry very quickly. And I think that's a huge opportunity for New Zealand.
Yeah, it's interesting that kind of commenting into that silos, as it's been a bit of a theme, I guess, this morning. And I think that is, you've just nailed one of the advantages New Zealand has, is that if we break out of those silos, because we are a very small country of 5 million people, you can move really quickly. And there was another observation this morning that countries can change overnight almost in terms of regulation. But the key aspect, I think, with New Zealand is that once we make a decision from an investment business standpoint, you can trust that decision will be stable. And I think that's a huge draw from an investment kind of landscape piece. Mm-hmm. Thank you. That was very insightful. Rocky, I'm going to go to you next. So you're our inside government guru here today. And I think probably one of the things I wanted to touch upon you was the travel rule and New Zealand's approach and how that maybe differed from our neighbours and I guess regionally across the world as well.
Thanks, Rachel. And that's a good point in regards to the travel rules. New Zealand, in comparison to some other jurisdictions, i.e., kind of Australia, New Zealand has fully implemented the travel rules in New Zealand, and so that creates obviously the elephant in the room in regards to the challenges in respect of compliance. Potentially, as all of you may be aware, in regards to the sunrise issues, in regards to interoperability. So that is an issue that we have identified from a compliance perspective. But what we are also equally seeing is entities taking a proactive approach in regards to taking steps to rise to that challenge in regards to mitigating that risk and really achieving what the real purpose was in regards to the travel rule implementation. So entities that are operating in New Zealand is definitely taking steps to try and basically be compliant in respect of the actual requirement, despite the technical challenges which we all acknowledge in the room. So from a New Zealand regulatory perspective for AML-CFT, me being the regulator, truly do believe that our supervision expectation is clear to the reporting entities from a New Zealand perspective, that is what we can do in regards to really providing what we expect. We equally acknowledge there are challenges in regards to meeting that requirement given the actual international issues, as I've mentioned, in regards to interoperability, in regards to the sunrise issue. So those are, I guess, in one aspect, an advantage to New Zealand in that as a supervisor, we are very clear in regards to our expectation, but equally we also working with the industry to acknowledge that there are challenges around actually complying as well.
Can you maybe speak to a bit as well your experience with how maybe approaches have changed over time? Because I think one of the things that stood out to me there is that that piece about trying to enact some of this policy, right? So that's quite an interesting piece as technology has moved really quick. Regulation is really forced to move even quicker than it's ever had before. So an element of that change would be really interesting to hear about.
Yeah, I think the change obviously is as a traditional regulatory financial system, the legislation, and I'm sure my co-panelist Jeremy can talk to you around legislation and AML-CFT Acts the whole time. The important point there is more some of the legislations obviously needs to reflect to the emerging technology and the products and the services that are being offered in this particular industry. It's not a unique issue in regards to both the FATF recommendations and the actual legislation, because they are all primarily historically designed for historical old financial institutions, such as your larger banks and etc. So there is a uniqueness in regards to the way that we supervise differently in terms of different financial institutions, and that is a very important point from a supervisor's perspective, is that we need to understand the industry. We also acknowledge, obviously, as I've said, the issues and the actual challenges as well, the uniqueness in different industry, particularly the virtual asset space. So definitely we are, as a regulator, also definitely changing in regards to our approach. And the need to really working with industry to really understand what the issues are and the challenges are, and how we can then ultimately achieve the goal of not just tick box, do you meet the requirement of the travel rules, but actually the higher and the bigger picture of the intention of the travel rules. And are we mitigating money laundering and terrorism financing?
Yeah, that's a nice inference, a nice comment, is that, it can be very easy to get caught up, I guess, in the actual, like the process, rather than what you're actually trying to achieve and the end goal of some of these regulation kind of pieces. Interesting, thank you. And I think it's only going to get trickier. So job I don't actually envy. It's quite complex. I want to open this next question up to the whole panel. And this is a bit about, I didn't think we were ever going to get away from not mentioning the US in our panel today. And that's partly because New Zealand we do have a bit of a different flavour from the rest of the panelists this morning and the speakers, in that we are a very small economy and we only have 5 million people. But that can give us a huge advantage, but it also gives us maybe a bit of, we have to watch the rest of the world closely. That's, I think, part of our wait and see approach. But I want to kind of talk a bit about how the US being more crypto friendly under Trump and Australia kind of seeming to move forward with some digital asset frameworks and things like this. How can New Zealand avoid losing talent and also investment as people and businesses kind of go offshore? Multi-layered and complex. Maybe Jeremy, I'll bring it to you first to get your inference.
I'll keep it brief. I think there are many good reasons to live in New Zealand, and I think all we need to do, in addition to obviously things like just getting immigration settings right, and making sure we have the right sorts of visas for people to come in and work, and that's all sort of is happening at the moment, and the wider tech community is very focused on that. But otherwise, if we just get a little bit of impetus from the government and from the industry working together to say we're open for business, and we have some very user-friendly industry-led frameworks and regulation in place, I think it will be quite appealing for people to be here doing this sort of work, because obviously you can be anywhere in the world working in this space, and why wouldn't you want to be here? He says, looking out the window to check the weather. It's fine. It's great. Gloriously almost sunny.
Almost sunny. That's my memories from living in New Zealand as well. Trevor, I'm going to bring it to you, and I'm going to maybe ask for a bit of additional kind of framing here. I liked earlier what you said about the AI piece, because that's another huge piece of emerging technology that kind of has some of the same intrinsic challenges I think that digital asset sector has. And so between these two sectors and kind of bringing that into the conversation as well, what's your opinion? How can we evolve the New Zealand economy in that way?
Yeah, interesting question. It's a very real problem. I mean, some of the smartest people in Australia are Kiwis, right? And so I think that inherently undermines or identifies the problem. I mean, in my company at Avatars Global, we have 14 full-time staff and only 5 of them live in New Zealand. And that's, again, another identifier of the issue. We try and find the best people in the world to do the work that we're trying to do, and we don't care where they live. And that's the reality of modern business. And so, as Jeremy points out, there's a lot of reasons to live here, but without some momentum, and again, I come back to, if you want to provide the context in what's going on in the US, it's that kind of top-down decision-making that I think sends that signal. Waiting for industry up is we're going to end up with more of the same, I think, and it's going to take a lot longer for us to plug the brain drain. The last 12 months has been the worst it's ever been. I think the stat, and Paul's the best man in the room for stats, but I think the stat is something like 200 Kiwis a week are leaving.
It might even be a day. Is
it a day? There you go. So,
yeah.
It's a very, very real problem. The opportunity, though, is that both blockchain and AI are high-paying, high-skilled opportunities for the workforce. And so I think if we had some top-down leadership to demonstrate why I should build my business here, incentives for those who want to work in the industry here. So it's more than just, hey, New Zealand's a nice, safe place to raise a family. I'm not sure that that's enough. I think that's a very compelling offer, but I'm not sure it's enough. I think if we had some government support for startups in the space, industry coming in from overseas and setting up in this jurisdiction, and providing opportunities for people who want to grow in this sector to stay in New Zealand and mitigate some of the draw cards that are taking them overseas, which is lower cost of living, higher paid salaries, better lifestyle. I think it's not that hard for us to match or better that, right? Like, I live in New Zealand as an Australian and I love it here, but I acknowledge that I could earn more money in Australia and, all of the other things that come with that. And so I think if we had a bit of a top-down approach to say, okay, we care about this sector. Blockchain is more than just crypto and crypto exchanges. It's digital identity, it's supply chain, it's a technology play. It's part of the technology sector. And we currently employ 5 or 6% of the entire population into the technology sector, and it's the only sector that's outgrowing the industry averages. So, it's a rapidly growing sector that supports an enormous part of the New Zealand economy, and we're losing people, smart people, because of a few things that we could quickly change. So, I think a little bit of top-down leadership and some incentives for people to set up and build good, strong businesses here will put an end to that and see more people coming the other way.
I like it. The way you put it sounds simple. I'm excited to let's make it happen. It's going to be good. I think NZ blockchain is really stepping up. I think following Deco over here in Oz, and so when you encapsulate it as to what we can do, I think it's pretty clear how we can get more people back. Paul, I want to spin it back to you for this question as well, and I want to maybe add a little bit of a flavour as well, in that there was a recent listing of the ASX company coming to the NZX based on Bitcoin Treasury. So we can kind of see quite clearly there that there's a bit of an arbitrage opportunity from a regulation perspective. Because you are part of one of the biggest exchanges in New Zealand, can you give maybe a bit of a take on the product side, and then also generally as well, just about losing talent and investment and that kind of flavour to the conversation? Thank you.
Okay. So look, I work in a global business. We're already a global business before SwiftX bought us, and I think we now operate as a SwiftX group across 8 or 10 countries. And I think in our industry that's a fact of life, because that's where the talents are, and they're fairly hypermobile. The other thing I just want to get out there, New Zealand is, if you've seen the GDP numbers, the economy is staggering along. It's not in a great place, but the sector we're in is growing like a weed. We are in a really high growth sector. And I've worked in a declining industry. It was telecommunications, and I can tell you working in a growth industry is a lot more fun and more positive. And so I think a little bit of what Trevor said needs to come through. Like we just need to tell our story a little bit better about how we are growing and taking on. And Avatar's Global, parking, Blockchain New Zealand, but Avatar's Global is a fantastic little success story, and it's growing really well. So, hats off to all the builders. And we're now a part of a bigger company, and we're going to continue to build, and some of the roadmap's been announced, and there's more coming, and that's a big part of it, to attract talent, because people don't want to sit still. In terms of regulatory stuff, I think our sector is, and it always has been, semi-defined by regulatory arbitrage. And, the actions of the US are certainly giving that jurisdiction a whole bunch of clarity. It's not perfect, but it is helping. And my view is that is a catalyst for other governments to respond to, because that they want to be largely even, otherwise you kind of get out of kilter. And the good work that Trevor's doing with his Blockchain New Zealand hat on is trying to educate our parliamentarians and drive some change into that kind of thinking. And no surprises, tax is also up there. Government tax setting is a strategic advantage or disadvantage, and so there's certainly some things there we could do at a company level, or even a personal holdings level, to bring in talent. We saw that there can be other factors outside of that. During COVID, there were parts of the country where a whole bunch of crypto billionaires chose to live, and that was a real boon for that region, and continues to benefit from it. And we've looked at the stats, and crypto penetration in those regions is way higher than their population. You see the spill effects, and for us, it has big believers in the potential of the sector to help people get to their financial freedom. That's a big part of why we do what we do.
I think
sorry, Rachel.
That's such a good insight to kind of bring it into there's a flow and effect, isn't there? So you kind of had that piece where you invited people in, and you had a lot of crypto millionaires coming in, but then once you follow and you see the impact, that's a really interesting kind of piece to continue to do. I think, because just because we're running close on time, I might just spin it over to Rocky just very briefly. And Rocky, could you just jump in and maybe give, again, we are close on time, but I do want to get your take on how New Zealand kind of views the US maybe regulation and how that maybe impacted or some of the conversations you might have had around that in the bringing it back to the kind of New Zealand framing as we look overseas, especially for big players. Thank you, Rocky. And
Yeah,
thank you, Paul.
particularly around regulations, I think, or as a regulator, I think the only thing that we can really do specifically, practically, is to provide guidance and clarity as we can, as much as we can, particularly from a supervisor perspective, because of the fact that there are different levers in terms of legislation and supervisory functions in New Zealand. But from a supervisor perspective, our intention is to provide clarity as much as we can in regards to the legislation and our expectation.
So you're saying avoid backflipping and okay, I get you. Thank you. That was brilliant. And I think we do have a minute, so I always like finishing on a very positive note. So I want to ask everyone three words to describe the New Zealand regulation, and it must be positive. And I will start with you, Jeremy.
Upwards.
Pardon?
Upwards and upwards.
Love it. Thank you, Paul.
Transparent and approachable regulators. It's a real standout of our community.
Nice. I agree. Couldn't agree more. And Trevor?
In the room. Look, there's one right there.
Right.
All right. So yeah, I think we have a huge opportunity. You know, there's not many jurisdictions in the world where, you know, I'm in a fortunate position. I can pick up the phone and call Rocky and we can have a chat, or I can call Alan Cross, or I can even call members of Parliament. That's not something that is possible in most jurisdictions around the world, and it's a massive opportunity for us if we take advantage of that. Not that I'm saying that they should answer my calls, but the accessibility, I think, is the key takeaway. Yeah.
Not 3 words, but I liked your answer anyways, so I'll take it. And Rocky, to describe yourself.
Very
3
similar.
words.
Engagement, transparency, and accessibility is what we, as a regulator, generally will provide.
Strive for. I love it. Just absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much to Dika for putting this together. It's been a wonderful, wonderful morning, and I've really enjoyed being with my panelists. And thank you, Trevor, for the last minute stress as well, jumping in there. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you to our speakers for that conversation on New Zealand.